Well, let's begin, everyone. Thanks for being here. I'm spending a lot of time yesterday and today just watching the snow melt. That's literally what I've been doing. It's a lot of fun. There's a lot of snow here. And welcome. We're going to focus on teachings about Purim today because Purim begins this evening. And the first thing I want you to know is that I hope you can attend. We rehearsed a wonderful Purim play, a Purim spiel, adapted for Zoom, and I'm very excited about it. And we'll be reading the Megillah online, and in between each chapter and section of the Megillah, we have let's just say we're expanding the story. And I think it's going to be really fun. So that's tonight at 7 p.m. Everyone's welcome. You have to go to our website to register your name and email, and then you immediately get a Zoom link that you can join us. So that's tonight at 7, so that you can celebrate Purim. Joan has her hand up. Would you like to unmute yourself, Joan, and say what you'd like to say?
Just a question, because I just got in a few minutes late. I was searching around. It's sometimes hard to find exactly which one is the right link. So I missed the beginning. I'm wondering simply, are you still looking for readers for that, for the spiel, or is it not needed?
No, but we're going to need readers for the Megillah.
Right, that's, well, right.
Joan, it's going to be really simple. If you either go to the Woodstock Jewish Congregation website and click on the Purim links, it will lead you right to it's just like getting on Shabbat services.
Oh, sure, I know. In fact, I've got that set up for myself for later. I just wondered if you were looking for volunteers.
Volunteers are going to be reading the text of the Megillah. And yes, I would love to have you be one of the readers. We're going to assign them on the spot tonight.
Excellent. I'll be there.
Okay, good. All right. Great. Okay, so let's talk about Purim. And I am mildly prepared today. Let's just say I've been somewhat overwhelmed with Purim preparations, but Purim itself is supposed to be raucous. And Purim is Myrna, you've got your good hat on. Where'd you get that? That's marvelous. Oh, sorry, you're muted.
At the Ringling and Barnum Brother Museum in Florida.
Oh, that's great. That's great. So, and Purim's kind of a strange holiday, but it's only strange if you think that religion is supposed to be perpetually serious and reverent and, I don't know, weighty or something like that. And that's our problem. We have somehow assumed and inherited an idea of religion as something that's supposed to be ultimately serious, whereas it's not all the time. Sometimes it's reverent, sometimes it's elevating, and sometimes it's just supposed to be releasing and fun and exuberant, and that's what Purim is. So the scroll of Esther, again, will be called one of the strangest books in the Bible. And it's considered strange as a book in the Bible because the name of God is not mentioned once in the entire book of Esther. Okay, so just take that in for a minute. The name of God is not mentioned Yeah, Paul wrote it's a Jewish Mardi Gras, and that is correct. That is correct. It's a blowout. Purim is the blowout holiday in the Jewish tradition. The name of God isn't mentioned in the book at all. And furthermore, the name of the holiday, Purim, okay. Purim, as many of you know, means lots, a game of chance. So it's the holiday of throwing dice. What's that doing in a tradition that assumes that there's divine hand guiding us through history? And we have a holiday that we call the holiday of throwing dice that has no mention of the name of God in it. And yet it's in our Bible. So that's the first thing to wrap your mind around about Purim. There are many, many efforts to, and these aren't, I'm not actually looking askance at these. There are beautiful, beautiful teachings about the deep meaning of Purim. And we're going to talk about that today. But in my opinion, and this is, in my opinion, of all the different levels that one can focus on each Jewish holiday, the level to focus on Purim is the level of thumbing your nose at all pieties, um, all powerful positions, all so-called, so-called pillars of the faith, right? Here's a holiday where we celebrate a game of chance and where God doesn't even show up. And I just love thinking about it. The way I like to describe it to myself is that you can't celebrate Judaism by just celebrating Yom Kippur, right? If you show up in synagogue once a year on Yom Kippur and you say, well, Judaism is so heavy, but that's what happened to a lot of us, right? There was no deep connection to the spiritual rhythms of Judaism in many, many, many of our upbringings. And yet there was an attachment to staying connected. And that attachment manifested as Passover Seder and going to shul once a year on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, and maybe lighting Hanukkah candles. Unfortunately, that's such a, impoverished experience of the kind of symphony of Jewish life and spirituality that it left us all cold, And Purim, because especially in the 20th century, as the Jewish community wanted to Americanize, that means we wanted to be viewed as quite proper and upstanding citizens, who sit politely in our pews and listen to the rabbi give a sermon. This was an Americanized form of Judaism. That Purim was reduced immediately to a children's holiday because only children are supposed to have fun, right? So I've spent, decades now reclaiming Purim at the Woodstock Jewish Congregation. We've done a great job here, as many of you know, doing it our way. There are a lot of ways to have fun and be raucous, and we're going to do that tonight and make fun of everything. Okay, so here's this holiday in the whole rhythm. Like if I would think of the Jewish cycle of holidays through the year as being like a symphony in many, with many movements, then you go through every emotion. And here you come to the silly part, the lilting part, the dissonant part, the wacky part. And that's part of us. So if we don't incorporate that, so for me, the Jewish cycle of holidays is like a whole personality. And if we skip over the parts that we don't like, we're missing a piece of ourselves. It's like, and if you ever needed to laugh, it's at the end of winter and sort of have a blowout and, traditionally get drunk or get high. And, but after a year of being shut-ins like this, oh my God, how are we going to do it? Let's just blow off some steam. So that's Purim. But it's really very deep because it's so subversive. Because we acknowledge to ourselves, by taking in the whole range of Jewish holidays, that there's one time of the year when we say, all that stuff about how God is with us and that where there's a sense of purpose in life, we're moving in a direction where towards the light and all that. Screw it. Maybe it's just a game of chance. Let's have a party, right? And what a relief to do that. What a relief to make fun of it all once a year. But I guess that can be also very threatening because you're making fun of it all. So you have to be, in a way, you have to be really secure secure about your connection to it all in order to do this one as well. Because it's threatening, it's uncomfortable. The holiday is called Life is a Crapshoot, and God's nowhere to be found. So
Jonathan,
yes, Myrna?
I had the privilege of doing the Rosh Chodesh this month. So if I would love to share what I learned at some point.
Would you please? I would love that.
Oh, okay. Is this a good time?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, first of all, not only is there no God, but there's no mention of prayer, no mention of Israel. And then when you get to the other things, you see, Esther has no Jewish husband. She intermarries. I mean, there are all these other issues that you talk about. And she actually probably was a concubine. And she doesn't seem religious. She doesn't seem like she maintains any kashrut or anything. So it's all very accepted. And she's a she's somebody that everybody looks up to. She's a hero, a heroine, whatever. So it kind of it kind of shows you that this is an imperfect world with an imperfect person who does good.
Nicely put. This is where our problem is that we want it all to be consistent. We want our heroes to be upright and utterly righteous. We want to know what the plan is. And yet, even when you read Genesis, Jacob is one complicated, conniving guy, right? And he's the father of our people. So I think one of the problems is our, and it comes from living in the time and place where we do, as I said, our kind of rigid, very limited take on what righteousness is, how our religious text should be, all of that stuff. Paul said, I had heard that up to Purim, inspiration had always come from above, from the divine. But with Purim is the first time you get inspiration from within. Megillah, the first Jewish novel. Good comments, Paul. We're going to allude to that. And Joshua says, isn't chance, randomness, an aspect expression of God? Who gets to decide? The closest that the Megillah comes to expressing that there might be a divine hand is in this famous moment when Mordechai says, do not imagine that you, of all the Jews, will escape with your life by being in the king's palace, he tells his niece. On the contrary, if you keep silent in this crisis, relief and deliverance will come to the Jews from another quarter, while you and your father's house will perish. That's as close as it comes. We don't know what he's talking about. And who knows, perhaps you have attained to royal position for just such a crisis. Umi yodea, who knows? And this for me is where the sort of rich beating heart of the story comes through the farce. Meg, I'll call on you a second. Thank you so much. I'm sorry I didn't see your hand. Is this mi yodea? Who knows? That's chapter 4, verse 14. Perhaps, im le'et kazot, for just such a moment, he got la malchut. You have attained this royal position. Who knows? Is it chance? Is it not chance? Yes. That's Meg's question. I'll get to that in a second, Meg. Let me just finish this train of thought, okay? So then Esther sent back to this answer to Mordechai. Okay, go, assemble all the Jews who live in Shushan and fast in my behalf. Do not eat or drink for 3 days, night or day. I and my maidens will observe the same fast. So that belies the idea that she wasn't religious in any way, Myrna. It's like, what is this fast for? And that's what Meg wrote in the comments. And like I said, I'll call on you in a moment, Meg. I and my maidens will observe the same fast. Then I shall go to the king, though it is contrary to the law. And if I am to perish, I shall perish. So this is the heroic moment in the story. Meg, yes.
That's what I wanted to ask about, because I'm confused. Isn't all the joyfulness the result of the fact that the people fasted? Esther was the hero because she didn't know. She could have gotten herself killed when she went to appeal to the king. So there's this solemnity that could be reenacted if people were fasting today, since it is the fast of Esther Day, which always, definitely, according to the Megillah, preceded the joyfulness, which was a result of the fact that the king did side with her. So I think that everything you've been talking about, the whole cycle of but Purim itself includes it, because weren't the people fasting? I mean, it was a fast for Esther, but what I don't understand is, weren't they fasting because that was the way they appealed to God?
I think so. There's the fast of Esther, which is today. And many Jews fast today in preparation for the Purim feast and the Purim festival. So yes, they're fasting, but the oddity of the book is it seems to, I mean, think about the Bible. There's 2 books that don't even mention the name of God. There's the Song of Songs, and there's Esther. So in a anthology of 32 books, or however we want to count them, in which God is the driver of creation and human history. That's how we read God throughout the Bible. The oddity of Purim is that they're fasting, but fasting to whom? And why doesn't it say so they fasted to God? Why doesn't it? And so this is the question that just gets us going all the time. But yes, there's a solemnity and a dread and a fear. All of that is present in the story. It's the absence of God as in a biblical book that just makes us curious. But everything you said is valid.
Well, Esther is amazing.
Esther's amazing.
Maybe next year, I'm having lunch now, but maybe next year I'd fast in her honor.
Right, I haven't observed the fast myself. Sylvia says, so interesting that God is not mentioned in the 2 places where there is pleasure, rejoicing, ecstatic joy. It's fascinating, but it's also important to remember, and it's important to remember that these books were included in the Bible. So clearly for the framers, these were holy books. So what it does is it messes with our heads about what we think the Bible is. And I like that. I want our heads to get messed with. And Purim messes with our heads and shakes our sureties up about, say, what Judaism is, what the Bible is, what religion is. You know, it's like, I like it for that. It's supposed to rattle our pieties and our sureties and our assurances. And the text is the book of Esther, but the holiday itself and the way it's enacted is at least as important as the story itself. And we shouldn't take ourselves that seriously also, all of it. So no, it's got the whole human drama in there, but it's also like poking at us at the same time. Now, as many of you know, when you read the book of Esther, it reads as a classic palace farce. The king and his male advisors fire Vashti because she won't come do their bidding, and send a note out to all the women of the every household in Persia saying women must obey their husbands. And then the king winds up doing everything Esther tells him to do, right? So that joke is embedded in the story, along with the joke about the Jews, which is that Haman wants to kill all the Jews, and Haman gets hung on the gallows he built for the Mordechai. Complete turnaround, right? And there's mistaken identities. And Haman comes into Ahasuerus's court right when Ahasuerus is saying, I want to honor the guy who saved me from that attempted palace coup. And Haman says, who would the king want to honor more than me? And then Haman gets his really gets his comeuppance in the scene where Esther maneuvers to have him and the king for a banquet, and then says to the king, Your Majesty, I'm a Jew and someone wants to kill me. And he says, who is that? This man Haman right here. The king storms out to his garden. Haman falls on Esther's couch to beg for his life. The king comes back and says, oh, Haman's even going to rape my queen. And you have to see it as a slamming door is open, no, wait, mistaken. The whole story reads that way. And I love it. I really like this story. There are some people for whom farces and turnabout is fair play, for whom this kind of story, they don't like it so much. But I'm Marx Brothers all the way, and some people don't like that. But look at the way that our tradition has embodied Purim with masks, with unbridled revelry, with noise making, with making a racket, all of it just speaks to me that this is the deep meaning of Purim. This is our day. So Mardi Gras is a great analogy. Even the turn on Vashti is a joke, macabre. Yes, Joan, I agree. Having said all that, Jewish spiritual teaching elevates this quality of breaking all the rules, having a day when we just don't talk, we don't mention God's name, when it all is, it elevates it to a very high spiritual level. And this also is beautiful to me because it messes with our heads some more. That solemnity is one way to get to an elevated spiritual state. But revelry can be another way. And that's what Purim's intended to be. Let me share one of my favorite teachings from the Fat Emet, this book that I come back to over and over again. I'll show it to you again. Many of you, of course, have studied with me for years. Just turning my phone down.
Yes, was frozen. Did he go away?
Yeah.
Okay. I sent him a text.
Meanwhile, do you know anything about this book, this Fat Emet?
That's one book I don't think I own.
One of
Ellen
the
Weaver
few.
has it.
One of the few. But is it correct? Is Sfat Emet meaning truth that comes out of Sfat?
No, Svat, tongue,
Tongue.
speaking
Good.
to.
So spoken truth.
Well, yeah.
Well, it's
The language.
Rabbi Yehuda Leib, Alter of Ger, who becomes known as the Sfat Emet. And this is a commentary that Bart Green has translated, usually 3 small snippets from different years of his Torah teachings, and then adds a little comment on each one. It's one of my favorite books.
Thank you, Ellen. Yehuda Leib Ger.
Alter.
Leib, the altar of Ger, the old one of Ger. Anyway, Rabbi Yehuda Leib is all you need, and he is the Sfat Emet, so you don't need any other designation for him.
Thank you. Ellen, why aren't you a rabbi yet?
I'm not training to become a rabbi.
I just mean, I'm kidding you, but you've got at least a minor in rabbinics by all this.
Well, I was ordained as a rabbinic pastor in
There you go.
the end of 2004. And, I rabbi occasionally, but I'm not a rabbi.
Okay, Rabbi Jonathan is trying to get reconnected and he's going to try to call in.
I'm sure.
Beautiful.
Excuse me, how would I get to tonight's program on Zoom?
Gotta go to the website and register. Go to wjcshul.org.
WJ,
CSHUL.org.
WJSHUL.
Yeah.
.org.
Back.
WJC.
J
Can you hear
what?
me, everybody?
Yes, yay.
The
Yes.
Wi-Fi went down here. I connected through my phone, and I hope that works.
Claire, I put it in chat so you can copy it.
I can't get to chat. I don't know
Oh,
what the,
okay. Rob, can you help Claire later, please?
Is he there?
Yes, I will. I'll take care of you later, Claire.
Okay, thanks.
Teamwork.
This happened yesterday here too. I don't know. But I'm back. Redundancy is good. So I'd like to share on my screen a teaching from the Fat Emet. Would you make me co-host again, Ellen?
Oh, sorry.
That's all right.
There you go.
Thank you. Can you see it? Move it over this way.
That's good.
Okay. The Fat Emet says, quoting the Talmud says we should be so intoxicated on Purim that we cannot distinguish blessed be Mordechai from cursed be Haman. What an amazing thing for the Talmud to say. Because of the anomalies of what's going on for me today, I can't, I won't be able to see your chats right now. It's really weird. Okay, I'll just talk away. It turns out that in Gematria, which is assigning Hebrew numbers to Hebrew letters in ancient Gematria, Baruch Mordechai and Arur Haman add up to the exact same number. Who figured that out? Which means in Gematria, and therefore in Jewish teaching, that blessed be Mordechai and cursed be Haman on some level are the same thing. And this is where we get into the deepest teachings about Purim. You're supposed to get so intoxicated on Purim that you cannot distinguish blessed be Mordechai from cursed be Haman. And then this Fat Emet continues. I heard my grandfather and teacher say that one has to rise to a place higher than the tree of knowledge of good and evil. Wow. Okay, go back to the garden, everybody. There are two trees in the garden. The tree of the knowledge of good and evil, which Adam and Eve eat from, is the tree that gives them self-consciousness, self-awareness, and where they have shame and they realize they're naked and they can distinguish, and this is the key between knowledge of good and evil, or also tov v'ra could be translated as good and bad. They enter dualistic consciousness, which is our everyday consciousness. You cannot exist in the world if you don't know that you shouldn't touch the stove when it's on, right? You have to learn what's good and what's bad. You have to know that you shouldn't eat that mushroom, but you can eat this mushroom, right? That's what we need to live in the world. There's nothing wrong with it. In fact, eating from the tree of knowledge of good and bad is what enables us to live in the world. And yet there's another tree in the garden called the tree of life. We get kicked out of the garden before we eat from that tree because it says you'll live forever. They'll live forever and be like us, heavenly beings. But I want to suggest that on the spiritual plane, there's a completely different meaning to living forever. It means living in eternity, living in infinite oneness, right? Which is an experience that we seek. We want to get back to the garden to recapture that feeling of beyond distinctions, beyond blessed is Mordechai and cursed be Haman. And so there's this beautiful teaching. First, he says, he's quoting his grandfather. He says, I don't recall the whole teaching in its proper order. And the exclamation point is from the editor, Art Green. Wow, he said that. But, he says, the point was and I just love this text. I love how immediate it is. It's like he's saying, he's talking to his people and say, I don't remember the whole thing, but the point was that the tree Haman prepared for Mordechai's hanging was 50 cubits high. Okay, it says in the text of Esther, it doesn't say he built a gallows 50 cubits high. It says he erected an etz. Etz is tree. So etz could also mean timber. He erected a giant timber. But the Hebrew says he built a tree that was 50 cubits high. And so for the spiritual teachers, this is very deep, because in the Jewish tradition, one of the numbers that gets used is there are 49 gates of defilement and purification, also known as the 49 gates of repentance. There are all these different dualisms that we need to distinguish between and enter through in order to become the realized righteous beings that we're meant to become. And on Yom Kippur, I am getting phone calls and texts and powers going out. All right. And yet I am still talking somehow. Okay, so, and I must say, when bells ring, I start to salivate. I'm so well trained, so I have to stay focused. The 49 gates of Teshuvah, which he calls defilement and purification, are how we understand the ascent we need to make on Yom Kippur towards atonement, at one-ment. Right? We need to be able to go through these gates, cleanse ourselves, do that hard work, that central, essential work of leaving the bad and choosing the good, of making amends of it, so that we can reach that state called at one-ment, atonement. And the 50th gate is the power of is found on all those 49 levels, where one can be either pure or impure, because you're in the realm of duality. And duality is not bad. We live in duality. You cannot live in duality without accepting it and working on each of those gates. Life is hard work. It's holy work. It's the essential work of being a human being. Yom Kippur and the days of atonement that precede it are the days when we, and all of the month of Elul, are the days when we immerse ourselves in that hard, holy work of becoming the human beings we want to become. And then the 50th gate is the gate of holiness. There are no two ways there, but only that of goodness, for that is the root of oneness. I love this teaching. I have to remind you that there are two uses of the word good in Genesis. There's chapter 1, where God repeats after everything God creates. God looks and says, it is good. It doesn't say it is good, not bad. God doesn't look and say, oh, that's bad, but that's good. Everything about that goodness is the goodness that's describing here, the root of oneness, the goodness out of which all creation springs. Then in the garden, in chapter 2, there's a tree of the knowledge of good and bad. That's a different level of discernment. But this goodness that's being referred to here, the root of oneness, that's what we experience when we experience at one-ment. At one-ment is an experience of glorious connection, of unfettered openness, of receiving and giving of the energy of life. Like that's the state of at-one-ment, which is what we want to elevate towards on Yom Kippur. On Purim, the spiritual teaching takes us, we elevate ourselves to that condition in a different way by utterly abandoning for a day. The word I'm looking for is decorum. We run our lives successfully because we all agree red is stop, green is go, right? And we do all these things so that we can live in the world together. And then comes Purim, a day when we just say, hey, this is a safe space. Let's scramble it up and just glory. Just have a ball. Just break all the rules and sing and dance and laugh. And when do we, so, you know, my family, I hope you get to have this experience sometimes. I remember my girls just, and me too, you know, all of us, we just cherish the moments when we've been reduced to laughter that we can't even stop ourselves, right? That's what I'm talking about. It's like everything dissolves. Was I mad about something? Did I have something I was planning to do tomorrow? What were we talking about? And what an incredible machaya to have that moment erupt and just be wiping our eyes and looking at each other and bursting into laughter once again. Nothing else exists. It's just so beautiful. That's another way. I think it's why we love comedy so much. That's another way to attain the 50th gate. And that's what I think the Fat Emet is trying to teach us here. I'll go on with this teaching since I've still got the standard, and then I'll get your comments because I can't see them right now. Oh, it's fun to talk about that. I'll bring in the other related teaching from the Zohar that also animates all of this, which is that two things. One is that it says, Yom Kippurim, which is Yom Kippur, Yom Kippurim, can be read as Yom Kippurim. Yom Kippurim means the Day of Atonement. Yom Kippurim means a day that is just like Purim. And the teachers love to play with this. They say, how is Yom Kippurim like Purim? And I've been trying to address that in my comments to you off of this teaching. But they also say, it also says in the Talmud, this is Zohar's much later, in the Talmud there's this saying that when the Messiah comes, all the festivals will be negated. We won't need festivals anymore, except for Purim. And in other words, somehow, when we don't need rules anymore, when the Messiah comes, when we transcend this mortal coil, as it were, and enter paradise, it's going to be Purim every day. We're not going to have to distinguish between blessings and curses. We will have returned to the tree of life, the 50th gate. And every day will be like Purim. I love that teaching. So he then says, that is why it says in the battle against Amalek. Okay, so he's making a link between Purim because Haman is identified as a descendant of Amalek. Amalek being the force of evil in the world, the force that tears us apart. And in Exodus, it says, Moses went up to a mountain over the battlefield, and when his arms were raised, Israel would prevail over Amalek. But when his arms got weary and fell, Amalek would assume the lead in the battle. And so it says that Aaron and Hur held Moses' arms up when his arms got tired. And it says, when Moses lifted his hand, Israel was victorious. And the Fat Emet here says, because he was raising it toward the 50th gate, the tree of life, which is the Torah. Not the physical Torah, but the Torah that is the tree of life. Eitz Chaim Hi. The Torah that is the blueprint of creation that God is manifesting the world through. When the power of Moses, the Prince of Torah, is awakened, Amalek is defeated. Duality, Haman, us versus them, blessings and curses. That is why, and that what's so subversive about this is so much of the Torah is about blessings and curses. If you do this, you'll be rewarded. If you don't do that, and yet Purim is pointing us somewhere beyond all that, the same place that Yom Kippur points us, which is that in the final analysis, God forgives us. It's okay. We can breathe. We can expand. That is why we are told that on Purim there was another receiving of the Torah, the revelation of that tree of life. Why is that? Because at the end, when Esther and Mordechai decree that there's going to be a holiday, a new holiday, it says, and all the Jews accepted it, that this new holiday. And so that's what he's riffing on here. So on Purim, we elevate ourselves to the revelation of that tree of life, the 50th gate. That is a place that does not know about blessed be Mordechai and cursed be Haman. Since evil does not reach there at all to the root of unity. In Judaism, and I'm sure in other spiritual traditions, evil doesn't have independent existence from the power that human beings give to it through our cutting the world up into pieces. And so in the highest state, at the root of unity and the 50th gate, at the top of the tree of life, evil doesn't exist. It can't, because evil is separateness. Separateness is not evil. Evil takes our duality, our separateness, and turns that into a cause for its own elevation. So then it ends with a complex play on words that I'll leave for a moment. Here's what Art Green said about it. Purim here becomes a third festival of revelation. On Shavuot, the original written Torah was revealed. Because its light was too great for mortals to bear, the tablets had to be broken. Yom Kippur is the day of the second tablets, the Torah as restored by human participation in the revelatory event. It is thus the source of oral Torah. Purim hints at a third level, the revelation of a Torah beyond rules and statutes. Torah as the tree of life itself. This Torah is purely mystical. It is the name of God, that which was before the beginning and will finally be revealed only at the end. That is why we are taught that Purim, unlike the other holidays, will continue to exist even in Messianic time. I hope you enjoyed that teaching of the Fat Emet. I just love going over. I think I taught that one last year at our class too. I just don't get tired of it. So on the most mundane level, Purim is the holiday to remember to have fun for God's sake. And then on the mystical and spiritual level, Purim is a holiday that by remembering to have fun, we reach the point where all divisions dissolve. And we can go back to our life, hopefully refreshed, because you can't stay up at the top of the tree forever. You have to come down again. And that leads to another teaching that I think I initially learned from my friend, Rabbi Bill Strongen, that Purim, in a way, prepares us for Passover, which will be 1 moon from now, where we've kind of shaken off the cobwebs and we can start spring cleaning, and we can start clearing out the gunk from our souls and our houses and getting ready for a holiday of liberation. But a holiday that's a lot of work, right? It's a serious holiday. It's like if every day was Purim, the laundry would never get done. That's why every day isn't Purim. When the Messiah comes, who's doing the laundry anyway? So, so I see Purim also as a beautiful, beautiful preparation for the hard work of Passover, which is also liberating. And Deborah said, this is the perfect next step after last class's even deeper guidance about understanding barriers and transcending barriers. Oh yes, with those beautiful teachings about the Mishkan, yes. Paul Bloom, getting it out of your system. What we're getting out of our system is our frustration with the way things are. They're still going to be that way the day after Purim, right? We live in the world of constantly having to distinguish between good and bad, right and wrong. You know, it's like, it's still going to be that way, but we got it out of our system. What do we get out for me? Our frustration with it, the constraining feeling of it. And then we can come back like with a Zen master, and enlightenment is doing the dishes, right? In the greatest sense. It's like, yeah, this is what there is to do. But if you don't have this recuperation, this kind of freeing, this remembering, then it just feels like bondage. And we can't always be drunk, says Joan. That's right. Again, I don't drink, but you know, you can get drunk on God. You can get drunk on joy. You can get drunk on it all. But then, and it's like when you're laughing and try just till you cry, like, oh, thank God. Now I can get back to whatever the hell I was doing. But if we don't have those moments, and that's what Purim's for, we really are. We're in bondage. We feel oppressed and enslaved. Good. So happy Purim, everybody. I think we'll conclude there.